Adult Fairy Tales 3-pack, Books 10 through 12. BDSM Erotica, Anal Sex Erotica, Virgin Erotica, Fairy Tale Collection. Written by Margot Devine. Narrated by Edie Olliver. Jack and the Farmer's Daughter. Betsy heard the rustle from the bushes, but chose to ignore it. By now she knew who it was. Instead, she swung the axe down at the trunk of wood that she'd positioned on an old tree stump. It was split with a crack, and Betsy wiggled the axe free. She was handy. You had to be when you were a farmer's daughter. Jack watched on from the bushes. Betsy had fascinated him for most of adolescence, and now, at 19, he could feel the pull of Betsy's allure. She was pretty, if a little thick-set. A rich diet in her youth had seen Betsy surge to swell over 6 feet. Jack, for his part, wasn't quite as muscle-bound. I guess you could call him athletic, but in contrast, the farmer's daughter was built like a short-putter or ancient gladiator. Her Amazonian physique was what drew Jack towards her so readily. "You can come out," Betsy said, sucking in several deep breaths. The rustle grew louder, and she turned back to see a timid Jack emerging. She almost always caught him, save for the one time that Jack had watched her cool off in the local lake. Geez, he'd had a field day that afternoon. "Good morning, Betsy," he said with half a wave. "It was," she said, trying to hide her wry smile. She loved to fuck with Jack. "What is it you're doing there?" Jack asked, kicking his boots along the floor and walking forward with his hands in his pockets. "What does it look like?" Betsy swung the axe down again, and Jack watched, mesmerized. The top of her breasts were visible in the opening of her plaid shirt. She tied it in a knot beneath her bra, and her tits shook every time she moved. "Smart to chop wood now," Jack said, looking around. "Winter is only around the corner, after all." "We're hoping for a good crop this year." She positioned another log on the stump and aimed her axe. Jack watched in silence, focusing on her breasts that wore a sheen of glistening sweat. He could feel his cock begin to twitch. "You need a hand?" he asked. "I think I got it." She used both hands to hold the long handle, and her cleavage fattened as she swung the axe around her head and down. The chopping noise cut through the silence, along with the grunt as Betsy exhaled. "Mom says it might be a harsh winter," Jack said. "I bet she does." Betsy set the head of her axe to the ground and leaned on its handle. She stood almost a foot taller than Jack, and she was a damn sight more muscled. At 20 years old, she also yearned for the pleasures of the opposite sex, but she was much easier at hiding it. She looked at Jack until he started to feel uncomfortable. Betsy's eyes suddenly widened as an idea formed. From time to time, she'd play tricks on Jack to keep her life interesting. Even now, she'd lie in bed laughing, thinking of the time a few years ago that she convinced him to be her own personal scarecrow in exchange for a sniff of her panties. He'd stood with his shirt over that staff of wood for almost 8 hours until she finally came and helped him get loose. "My dad's already thought ahead," Betsy began. "He bought some seeds from an old lady at the market that promise a stellar crop. We'll be fine." Some of that was true. Her father had indeed bought some seeds from the local market, but the lady, although mysterious, had said nothing about planting them. Betsy had been chewing on them steadily all morning. She fished into a pocket and produced a few of them. "These," she said, putting a sparkle in her eyes, "they are all we need." Jack moved closer and looked into her palm at the small black teardrops. "Those?" he asked. "What are they?" "Magic," Betsy said, and she put them back in her pocket. "What do they do?" "I already told you. Plant a few of these, and you won't be short of food." "Do you have any extra?" Jack asked. By now he was standing at Betsy's side and taking every opportunity that he could to look across at her breasts. They hung almost at face height for him. "Extra?" Betsy laughed.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?